My stepson told me to stop trying to be my dad because I am just the guy who pays for things. I replied understood. Then I liquidated his $85,000 college fund to pay off my mortgage and put his prized Mustang up for sale. He had to get a job the next day, and now he is working at a chicken restaurant while living in his grandparents' basement. I am 45 years old, and I am not the kind of guy who posts his life online. I am a pretty private person, but what happened has pushed me to a point of clarity. And I guess I need to articulate it somewhere, if only to prove to myself that I am not losing my mind. I married my wife, Amanda, 10 years ago. She had a son, Tyler, from a previous relationship. Tyler is now 17 years old. His biological father has been completely out of the picture since Tyler was a toddler. No calls, no cards, no child support. Just gone, like he never existed. I stepped into Tyler's life when he was 7 years old. For the past 10 years, I have been the only father figure he has ever really known. I have paid for everything in his life. Private school tuition that costs more than most people make in a year. Braces that cost $8,000. Summer camps where he learned to play lacrosse and tennis. Family vacations to Disney World, the Grand Canyon, and Europe. I taught him how to ride a bike in our driveway, running alongside him until he found his balance. I taught him how to drive in an empty parking lot, patiently explaining how to parallel park and merge onto highways. I was there for every scraped knee, every bad grade, every teenage heartbreak. For his 16th birthday last year, I bought him his dream car. A classic 1968 Ford Mustang in pristine condition. It was not some cheap project car. I spent the better part of a year and about $20,000 of my own money restoring it in our garage. New engine, new transmission, custom paint job, leather interior. It was our project together, or so I thought. We spent countless weekends working on it side by side, and I genuinely believed we were building something. More than just a car. I thought we were building a relationship. The college fund is another story entirely. It is not some ancestral trust fund or inheritance from wealthy grandparents. It is a standard brokerage account that I opened the year I married Amanda. The account is solely in my name, funded entirely by my salary as a senior project manager at a construction company. I've been diligently putting away $300 from every single paycheck for 10 years. Rain or shine, good months and bad months, that money went into Tyler's future. The account currently sits at a little over $85,000. My plan was simple and generous. Tyler would go to a good out-of-state university, graduate completely debt-free, and have a great start in adult life. No student loans crushing his 20s, no financial stress holding him back from pursuing his dreams. But the last year has been increasingly difficult. Tyler has become more distant, more sullen. I told myself it was standard teenager stuff. Hormones, growing independence, the natural process of separating from parental figures. But it was laced with something else that made my stomach turn. A kind of dismissive arrogance that seemed to grow stronger every month. He talked to his friends about the Mustang like he had earned it through years of hard work. He talked about his college plans like they were a birthright, something owed to him rather than a gift I was choosing to give. When his friends asked how he could afford such an expensive car in private school, he would shrug and say his family had money, never mentioning that every penny came from my efforts. The breaking point came last Thursday evening. His report card had arrived in the mail, and the grades were worse than I had ever seen. He was failing 2 classes, not because he was struggling academically, but because he simply was not showing up or turning in assignments. His teachers reported that he was skipping classes regularly, spending time in the parking lot with friends, instead of attending lessons that I was paying thousands of dollars for. I tried to talk to him about it in his room that evening. Tyler, we need to talk about these grades. This is not going to cut it for the universities you have been looking at. You are throwing away opportunities that most kids would kill for. He did not even look up from his phone. He was scrolling through social media, completely dismissing my presence in his own room. Whatever, he said with a shrug. It will be fine. It will not be fine, I replied, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable. Your teachers are saying you are skipping classes. What is going on? Help me understand what is happening here. He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. It was not just teenage defiance or normal rebellion. It was pure, undiluted disdain. The kind of look you give to someone you consider beneath you. Why do you even care? He said, his voice dripping with contempt. It is not like you are my real dad anyway. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I had heard variations of this before during arguments. I felt the familiar heat rise in my chest, the urge to lecture him about respect and gratitude. But I pushed it down and tried to respond with love instead of anger. I care because I love you, I said quietly. And I want you to have a good future. I want you to have opportunities and choices that I never had when I was your age. And then he said the words that changed everything. The words that would echo in my mind for weeks afterward, and ultimately reshape our entire relationship. He stood up from his bed, towering over me, even though he was still just a kid. His voice was cold and deliberate, like he had been waiting for the perfect moment to deliver this particular blow. No, you do not love me, he said with absolute certainty. You love playing the hero. You love acting like you are this great guy who saved us. Let us be honest here. Stop trying to be my dad. You are just the guy who pays for things. I looked at him for a long moment. Really looked at him. And I saw a stranger standing in front of me. The heat in my chest vanished instantly, replaced by an icy calm that surprised me with its intensity. There was no flicker of doubt in his eyes. No hint that this was just teenage anger talking. Just cold, hard dismissal of 10 years of my life, my effort, my love. He had taken a decade of my emotional investment, my financial sacrifice, my genuine care for his well-being, and reduced it to a series of transactions. In his mind, I was not a father figure or mentor or someone who loved him. I was simply a walking ATM machine, useful for funding his lifestyle, but deserving of no respect or affection in return. I did not yell. I did not argue. I did not try to explain how deeply his words had hurt me. I just nodded slowly and said one word. Understood. Then, I walked out of his room and closed the door behind me. The next morning was a Friday, and I decided to work from home. Amanda had already left for her job at the marketing firm, and Tyler had presumably gone to school, though given his attendance record, that was far from certain. At exactly 9:05 a.m., I called my financial advisor and gave him very specific instructions. I want to liquidate the entire college fund account immediately, I told him. Every stock, every bond, every mutual fund. Convert it all to cash. He was surprised by the request and asked if everything was okay. Financial emergencies happen, he said, but this seems sudden given our previous conversations about Tyler education plans. No emergency, I replied calmly. Just a change in priorities. How long will it take for the trades to settle and the funds to be available for transfer? He informed me it would take several business days for all the trades to settle and the cash to be available for withdrawal. That was fine with me. This was not an emotional decision made in anger. This was a calculated business decision based on new information about my return on investment. At 10:30 a.m., I called my bank and requested a formal mortgage payoff statement. My remaining balance was $76,450. The math worked out perfectly. The college fund would cover the entire mortgage with money left over. During my lunch break, I walked out to the garage where the Mustang sat gleaming under the fluorescent lights. This car represented hundreds of hours of work, thousands of dollars in parts, and countless weekends spent teaching Tyler about engines and craftsmanship. I had insisted that the title be solely in my name when we registered it, ostensibly for insurance purposes, much to Amanda's annoyance at the time. Now I was grateful for that decision. I took high-quality photos of the car from every angle. The exterior shots showed the flawless paint job and chrome details. The interior shots highlighted the custom leather seats and restored dashboard. The engine photos displayed the rebuilt motor that purred like a contented cat. I wrote a detailed, honest advertisement listing all the work I had put into the restoration and the car's current condition. I posted it on several classic car forums and online marketplaces with an asking price of $25,000. It was a fair price for the amount of work and money I had invested. Amanda and Tyler had no idea what I was doing. They assumed I was giving Tyler the silent treatment, some kind of passive-aggressive punishment that would blow over in a few days like previous arguments. But I was not angry anymore. I was not emotional. I was just a man who had been clearly informed about his role in this family, and I was adjusting my behavior accordingly. He wanted me to be the guy who pays for things. Fine. Dottie died. I had paid my dues for 10 years. Now I was closing that account permanently. The first sign that this was not a typical family argument came that Saturday morning. Tyler came into the living room around 11 a.m., jingling the Mustang keys in his hand, with the casual confidence of someone who had never been denied anything in his life. Hey, I am taking the car out, he announced, not really asking permission. Need some gas money? I looked up from my laptop, where I was reviewing responses to the car advertisement. I am afraid that is not possible, I said calmly. Why not? He asked, confusion replacing his usual arrogance. Because it is for sale. I've already got a potential buyer lined up to see it this afternoon. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Amanda looked up from her own laptop, her face a mixture of confusion and alarm. Tyler just stared at me like I had spoken in a foreign language. What? What? He finally stammered. It is my car. Actually, Tyler, it is not your car, I corrected him gently. And this is not a punishment. It is a financial decision. Amanda stood up quickly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. David, what is this? She demanded. You are going to sell his car to punish him for having an attitude? It is not his car, Amanda, I repeated patiently. The title is in my name. I paid for it. I restored it. And this is not a punishment. It is a business decision based on new information about my role in this household. I paused and looked directly at Tyler, whose face had gone pale. Speaking of which, I continued, the funds from the investment account I set up for college are being liquidated as we speak. I'm using that money to pay off the mortgage instead. What? That is when the screaming started. Amanda's voice rose to a pitch I had never heard before. How could you be so cruel? She shrieked. He is just a kid. He did not mean what he said. Tyler went through several emotions in rapid succession. First came rage, his face turning red as he clenched his fists. Then came disbelief, like he was waiting for me to admit this was all an elaborate joke. Finally came something that looked almost like panic. But it is my car, he protested, his voice cracking slightly. You gave it to me. What am I supposed to tell my friends? You could tell them the truth, I suggested calmly. That the guy who paid for it decided to sell it. That seemed to hit him harder than I expected. He stormed off to his room, and I could hear him slamming doors and throwing things around. Amanda followed him, and I could hear them having a heated conversation through the thin walls. When she came back downstairs 20 minutes later, her approach had shifted to bargaining and emotional manipulation. "This is our son, David," she said, her voice trembling with barely controlled emotion. "You are supposed to love him unconditionally, no matter what he says when he is upset." "I did love him unconditionally," I replied quietly, and the words felt like gravel in my throat. "But love has to be a two-way street, Amanda. Right now, this feels like a toll road where I am the only one paying." For the first week after my announcement, they both seemed to think I was bluffing. Tyler acted aloof, like he did not care about the car or the college money. He made jokes to his friends about his stepfather having a midlife crisis and acting crazy. Amanda gave me the silent treatment, assuming I would eventually crack under the pressure and apologize for my unreasonable behavior. But the car sale process helped solidify that I was completely serious about this decision. I got a flurry of responses to my advertisement, including several lowball offers and tire kickers that I politely declined. "Just got an offer for $15,000, I would announce at dinner. Declined it. The car is worth more than that. Some guy wanted to trade it for a jet ski and $5,000 cash. I mentioned another evening. Not interested." Tyler would watch these conversations with growing alarm, but he still seemed to believe that this was all some elaborate bluff designed to teach him a lesson. Then a serious buyer named Marcus contacted me through the Classic Car Forum. He was a collector who specialized in restored muscle cars, and he wanted to arrange for a professional third-party inspection before making an offer. That level of seriousness required scheduling and coordination that made the sale feel very real and very permanent. Tyler watched from his bedroom window as the inspector spent 2 hours going over the car with a clipboard and camera. The look on his face was not anger anymore. It was genuine fear as he realized that this might actually be happening. After a clean inspection with only minor cosmetic notes, Marcus made a solid offer of $23,500. He needed a few days to arrange financing, but he was committed to the purchase. We signed a formal purchase agreement that made the sale legally binding. It was all very professional, very procedural, and very final. Last night, I found Amanda crying in the kitchen. She had moved past anger and entered the bargaining stage of grief. Her approach had shifted to a different kind of emotional manipulation. "Okay, David, I get it," she said through her tears. "You are hurt. You made your point. But it is not too late to stop this. Call Marcus back. We can fix this situation. Tyler will apologize properly. Just tell me you will stop this madness." "The purchase agreement is signed, Amanda," I replied factually. "The funds from the investment account finished clearing yesterday. The wire transfer to the mortgage company goes through tomorrow morning." I was not trying to be cruel or vindictive. I was just stating facts as they existed. But to them, facts felt like cruelty because facts did not care about their feelings or expectations. There was a moment that night, looking at an old photo of me and a much younger Tyler on a fishing trip we had taken 3 years ago, where I felt a deep pang of regret. A voice in my head whispered, "Is this really worth it? Are you sure you want to burn down 10 years of relationship over something a teenager said in anger?" But then I remembered the coldness in his eyes that Thursday evening, the disdain in his voice, the absolute certainty with which he had dismissed a decade of my love and sacrifice. "You are just the guy who pays for things." The resolve hardened again. He had asked for this arrangement. He had defined the terms of our relationship with perfect clarity. I was just accepting his terms and adjusting my behavior accordingly. The last month has been a slow-motion demolition of everything we used to call a family. The Mustang officially left our driveway 4 weeks ago. Marcus arrived with a trailer and a cashier check for $23,500. He was a gentleman about the whole transaction. I handed him the title and keys. He handed me the check, and we shook hands. The sound of that engine firing up one last time and driving away was the end of an era. Tyler's been taking the city bus to school every day since then. The same kid who used to cruise into the parking lot in a classic Mustang now stands at the bus stop with a backpack, waiting for public transportation like any other teenager whose family cannot afford to buy him a car. A few days after the car sale, the confirmation I had been waiting for arrived in the mail. Mortgage payoff confirmation. Balance $0. I felt a lightness I had not experienced in years, like a physical weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I left the letter on the kitchen counter where Amanda would see it. She looked at it for a long time, then did not speak to me for 3 days straight. This is when she got desperate and tried to sabotage my professional life. Last week, I got an uncomfortable phone call from my boss at the construction company. "Hey David, everything okay at home?" he asked, clearly uncomfortable with whatever conversation he was about to have. My stomach clenched, but not with surprise. I had been expecting this call for days. "I got a call from Amanda yesterday," he continued reluctantly. "She said you have been acting erratically lately. Said you drained a savings account and are making impulsive financial decisions that have her worried about your mental stability." She had tried to frame my actions as signs of mental instability, painting herself as the concerned wife trying to protect the family from her husband's psychological breakdown. It was a betrayal on a whole new level. To try and poison my livelihood, the very source of the money she felt entitled to, was crossing a line I had not expected her to cross. The rage I felt was not the cold, calculated anger I had been experiencing. This was white-hot fury that made my hands shake and my vision blur. I had to go to the gym that night and beat the hell out of a heavy bag for an hour just to keep from putting my fist through a wall. Fortunately, I had been smart enough to have a quiet coffee with my boss several weeks earlier, when this whole situation started escalating. I had given him a brief heads up about potential drama at home. Having some serious issues with my stepson, I had told him. It might get messy, but I assure you it will not impact my work performance or professional responsibility. Now, I calmly explained the situation in more detail. She is upset because I paid off my mortgage with my own money instead of continuing to fund a lifestyle for a 17-year-old who told me I was just his wallet. Her call was a desperate, manipulative tactic to try and pressure me into resuming my role as the family ATM. My boss sighed and told me he had figured as much from Amanda's tone and approach. "Do not worry about it," he said. "Just keep doing the good work you have always done." Meanwhile, Tyler was facing his own harsh introduction to reality. The phone bill came due the week after the car sale. I texted him a screenshot of his portion. $95 for unlimited data and premium features. His reply was predictably indignant. "What the hell? You have always paid for it." I replied simply, "My role has been clarified. I am no longer the guy who pays for things. You have 48 hours to pay your portion, or the line gets disconnected." He needed money fast, and he needed it regularly. For 2 weeks, he tried applying to what he considered cool jobs. The trendy coffee shop downtown where his friends hung out. The bookstore at the mall where he could look intellectual. The sporting goods store where he could get discounts on expensive gear. No callbacks. His resume was essentially a blank piece of paper. No work experience, no volunteer experience, no leadership roles, no skills beyond being able to spend other people's money effectively. The arrogance slowly bled out of him, replaced by a sullen panic as reality set in. He finally, reluctantly, started putting in applications at fast food restaurants and big box stores. The kinds of jobs that teenagers with no experience and poor grades actually qualify for. Last week he came home wearing the ugliest polyester uniform I have ever seen. Sickly yellow and brown, with a matching visor that made him look like a traffic cone. He smelled like fried chicken and industrial cleaning products. He had gotten a job at a local chain restaurant, working evening shifts for minimum wage. He does not look at me anymore when he comes home from work. He just trudges upstairs in his ridiculous uniform, showers off the smell of grease and shame, and hides in his room. Amanda and I are living like ghosts in the same house. We speak only when necessary, and then only about practical matters like bills and schedules. The emotional intimacy that used to define our marriage has evaporated completely. Her parents, Robert and Linda, have been sending me self-righteous text messages about how I am ruining Tyler's future and destroying the family. They see me as the villain in this story, the cruel stepfather who punished a child for having normal teenage emotions. I have muted their conversations and blocked their numbers. They do not understand that this is not punishment. This is cause and effect. Tyler set the terms of our relationship with perfect clarity, and I am simply enforcing the contract he wrote. 6 months have passed since that conversation in Tyler's room, and the dust has finally settled. But it has not settled in the way you see in movies, with tearful reconciliations and lessons learned. It has settled in the way it does in real life, messily, permanently, and with consequences that ripple through everyone involved. Amanda and I are divorced. We separated 4 months ago, and the final decree came through last month. The counseling we attempted was a complete disaster. Every session came back to the same impassable gulf. She saw my actions as a vindictive overreaction to normal teenage behavior, while I saw them as the logical conclusion to the role her son had explicitly assigned me. The real turning point in our divorce proceedings came when the lawyers got involved. Amanda had initially consulted her attorney with the belief, encouraged by her father, that she could take me to the cleaners financially. She went into that first meeting expecting to walk away with half of everything plus generous alimony and child support. She came out of that meeting looking like she had seen a ghost. My lawyer had laid out the situation for me very clearly during our initial consultation. Paying off the mortgage with my separate funds did not magically make the house entirely mine. That was a fantasy that would not hold up in court. However, the legal principle of reimbursement was very much in my favor. Since the funds used to pay off the mortgage came from a non-marital account that was solely in my name, funded entirely by my pre-marriage savings and post-marriage income that I had kept separate, I had rock-solid claim to be reimbursed. The full $76,450 off the top from the proceeds of any house sale before the remaining equity was divided. When the house sold 6 weeks ago, the first check cut from the proceeds was for $76,450, made out directly to me. The remaining equity was then divided 50-50 between us as marital property. For Amanda, this was a financial apocalypse. She had been counting on splitting the entire value of a fully paid-off house, which would have given her close to $120,000. Instead, she walked away with less than $30,000, barely enough for a down payment on a modest apartment. It was not the total victory I had naively imagined at first, but it was a much smarter, more realistic outcome. I had protected my capital and ensured that my financial sacrifice would benefit me, rather than funding a lifestyle for people who saw me as nothing more than a walking wallet. When Amanda realized she could not legally force me to continue funding her and Tyler lifestyle at the level they had become accustomed to, the last pretense of trying to fix our marriage vanished completely. She moved in with her parents, taking Tyler with her. As for Tyler himself, the revenge was not a single dramatic event. It was the slow, grinding reality of a life without my financial cushion supporting every decision and mistake. The chicken restaurant job lasted exactly 2 months before he was fired for what his manager called attitude problems. Apparently, the same disdain he had shown me did not go over well with supervisors who actually had the power to fire him. He managed to get hired at a big box store stocking shelves during overnight shifts, but he quit after 6 weeks, complaining that the work was too hard and the hours interfered with his social life. He seemed genuinely shocked that employers expected him to show up consistently and work even when he did not feel like it. Tyler is 18 now, a high school graduate with a dismal grade point average and no clear direction in life. He is living in his grandparents' spare room, technically an adult, but functioning more like a dependent child who has never learned basic life skills. I saw him a few weeks ago at a grocery store. He was with Amanda, and they were clearly shopping on a tight budget, checking prices and using coupons like people who actually have to worry about money. He looked thin and tired, with the kind of defeated posture that comes from realizing the world does not owe you anything. He saw me in the checkout line and glared with pure, undiluted resentment. Then he turned his back and walked away without saying a word. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of how his actions had led to this situation, no understanding of the connection between choices and consequences. In his mind, I am and always will be the villain who blew up his comfortable life for no reason. I have come to accept that reality. You cannot force someone to see a truth they are determined to ignore. And Tyler has invested too much of his identity in being the victim to ever acknowledge his role in creating this situation. And me? The first few months after the separation were brutal. The silence in my new, smaller townhouse felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I mourned the family I thought I had built, looking at old photos and feeling a grief so sharp it took my breath away. It was not a clean break like cutting off a toxic friendship. It was more like an amputation, removing something that had been part of my identity for 10 years. There were nights when I questioned everything, wondering if I had thrown away a family over pride and hurt feelings. But it is getting better now. I am focusing on myself for the first time in a decade. I doubled down on my retirement savings with the money I am no longer spending on private school tuition and luxury items for people who did not appreciate. I took the $23,500 from the Mustang sale and bought myself a ridiculously nice mountain bike. And I have been exploring trails on weekends like I used to do before I became a full-time ADM. Last week, I adopted a dog from the local animal shelter. A scruffy mutt named Charlie, who does not care who pays for things. He is just happy that I am there to throw the ball and scratch behind his ears. There is something deeply satisfying about a relationship based on simple affection rather than financial transactions. I lost a wife and a stepson, but I regained my self-respect and my financial future. It was a hell of a price to pay, but it was a transaction I ultimately had to make. Tyler had made it clear that I was just the guy who pays for things, and I finally stopped paying. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like nothing more than a wallet? Share your stories in the comments below, because I know there are others out there who have faced similar situations. Sometimes, the hardest lesson is learning that love without respect is not really love at all. It is just exploitation, dressed up in family language. Hit that like button if you believe that actions have consequences, no matter who you are. Subscribe for more stories about people who learned that taking someone for granted can be the most expensive mistake you ever make. The moment I stopped being the guy who pays for things, I finally started being the guy who lives for himself. And honestly, that has made all the difference.